female finance collective where we encourage women to have open and honest conversations about all things money. Today, we are starting a new series all about debt. And in this episode, we're going to be chatting about debt repayment, starting from the time you make that decision when you're ready to put your focus towards working your way through that payoff process. We also want to acknowledge before we start the conversation that debt is really personal, and there are a lot of aspects to consider. What we're sharing here is for educational and conversational purposes and not specific advice. We just want to share our ideas and things that we know that have worked for us or for other people that we know. But it's always important to contact a finance professional if you have questions or want some input on your specific situation. So I'm going to dive in and talk about making that big decision. So when you've got this debt and it starts to feel overwhelming, and we're going to talk about other kinds of debt in other episodes, but today we're really talking about the kind that just feels overwhelming, the kind you wish you didn't have, the kind that is like well, for me, it was all consuming. I thought about money every single day. I stressed about how I was going to pay my debt off. I was nervous and worried about it all the time. And that's kind of what we're focusing on today. And there comes a time, I think, for everybody when your mindset shifts. I think this happens whenever you want to make a big change in anything, right? But your mindset shifts and you're like, nope, this is the time. I am ready to focus on this. I'm ready to make this debt payoff a priority. And we kind of become ready to take it on. And I know that that's what happens to me. I just realized that I had spent far too many years stressing and worrying and feeling overwhelmed by this. My debt in particular was credit card debt. And I just was like, I got to get this together. I have tried things in the past and they were not successful. I didn't. Again, I think I've talked about this before, but I wasn't asking questions. I wasn't asking for help. So I was literally just trying things that I was like making up or guessing might be good ideas, but I wasn't doing anything that was like clear and focused, and I wasn't really creating an actual plan for myself. So once you make that decision, I think that it becomes easier to really start the process, right? You get that mindset shift and you're like, okay, I am diving in and I'm going to start this process. And for me, what that looked like was just writing everything down. I had 2 credit cards, but the amount that was on the cards was more than I could pay. And so I just wrote it all down and I wrote down all the money I had coming in every month. And I really started to focus on my spending, where I could cut back and how I could focus and direct more money to those credit cards so that I could see the balances go down, because how it was going then, I was only making the minimum payment and the balance was staying the same, or sometimes it even felt like it was going up because of that interest rate.
No, I can relate to that decision-making process as well. I've had a few phases of debt in my life. And the first one that I remember was after I finished school, I had some student loans and I was not feeling great about it. My salary when I started working wasn't great. And I did the math around how big my debt was and how long it would take to pay it off. So I made a really difficult decision and I decided to move back home for a year and I attacked my debt. I made the decision that it was important for me to have that paid off. The second phase of debt was after I got married, had kids, and needed to furnish a home. It was such an exciting point in my life, but it was also a point in my life where I took on a lot of debt and I wasn't really thinking about the decisions on how long it would take to pay things off. And I find for me, when my debt level feels uncomfortable, that's when I start to think about it all the time. So, I might wake up in the middle of the night and I think about my debt total. And definitely I've had those points in time where I've realized like this feels like it's getting uncomfortable and it's time to create a plan to reduce the amount.
I love what you said about moving back home, because sometimes when we make that decision, right, we've hit that point and we make the decision, we have to take kind of massive action sometimes to make things happen. And even though there are probably some people who have the option of, we'll just use that as an example, moving back home, saving money and using it to pay off their debt. But they don't consider that because it's such a big action, right? And sometimes those big actions, we forget to even put them on the table as an option, right? Could you, I've talked about this with someone not that long ago. Could you sell your car and get something that had a lower payment? That feels really big to do, but it does put more money back in your pocket. Could you move? Would moving like put more money back in your pocket? Like those are major things. But when we get to this next point that we're going to talk about now, creating a plan, sometimes a massive action makes a huge difference in, I mean, in all kinds of things in life, right? But in particular, what we're talking about now, putting some money back in your pocket. So when you're creating your plan, you really need to come up with a clear repayment plan that makes the process more approachable. So all the times I had tried to come up with a plan before, it wasn't clear and certainly wasn't approachable. I was like saying, I mean, basically I had myself spending hardly any money on groceries every month. I was like, what was I planning to eat? I don't know, right? And I was like in my mid-20s and I was like never going to go out with my friends. Like none of that is approachable and it's not like a good process. So you have to think about that. How can I make my debt payoff a focus, but also keep my life in a way that I'm still finding joy, that everything feels still approachable? I'm going to talk about two key repayment strategies, and they are snowball and avalanche. So if you have multiple credit cards, sometimes it's really hard to know where to start, which one to start paying off first. And maybe we should also include, this can be more than credit cards. Sometimes people have multiple loans, lines of credit, and things like that. So I'm talking about all of that in one. And to me, seeing the numbers all laid out made it so much easier for me. I could see the interest rate for this particular debt. I could see the amount I owed. I could see the minimum payment. So I really think getting it all like on paper or typed out on a sheet so you can see it all is really important. So the snowball plan is paying off your smallest loans first as quickly as possible. So then you can free up the payments for those to put towards the next largest debt. That doesn't mean that you don't keep paying on the other debts at the same time, but you pay the smaller payments on those and your larger payments go to the smallest ones first so that you can wipe those out, clear them off, and then put more money towards the remaining balances. The avalanche plan is a little bit different. It's when you pay off the debt with the highest interest first. So again, paying your minimum payments towards the things with lower interest and paying off the higher interest loans first. There's a website, unbury.me, and we'll put it in the notes of this episode so you can find it. And what I love is this is a free website that lays this out for you perfectly. You don't have to create a login. You don't have to give them all your private information. Put your amounts that you owe, the interest rates, and it will lay out this payment plan for you so that you can see both options and then choose from there. And I think, Marilee, you mentioned a third option that I hadn't even really considered before, and I would love if you would share about that.
Okay, the third option is to think about your debts that are emotional. And sometimes when I'm working with clients, someone will have gone through a separation or a divorce and they've had to take on some debt. And that is the debt that feels the toughest for them emotionally. It creates more stress. And they're at the point they just don't want to look at that debt anymore. So they're prioritizing paying down that debt, keeping the minimum payments on their other debts, but their priority is to get that debt cleared as soon as possible so that they have the fresh start on life that they're looking for. I also wanted to mention a point about the snowball method. I find it works really well when clients are starting out with their debt repayment plans. And if they have lots of different types of debt, like, lots of little amounts, it really helps to get the smaller ones paid off because then they have less payments to worry about. It simplifies the management of their bill payments, and that's where the snowball can be really, really great to use if there's lots of different types of retail debt and things like that.
It's so interesting because we're such different kinds of thinkers. I'm definitely like an emotional thinker with my money as well. And I'm like that math thinker. So to me, I kind of like making my payments. I don't know. I have a love-hate situation, I guess. In a way, it feels good to be like, yes, I paid that off. I made that payment. And in a way, it's like on my mind, and I've got to make this payment. I've got to figure out how to get the money. But for me, I think interestingly to say, the numbers, like I don't know if they're equal to the emotions or a little bit more with financial things. And really how I've gotten better at math is becoming financially literate in so many ways, right? I can conceptualize numbers better. But for me, like I'm thinking about the avalanche method because of that numbers aspect. Jen, do you want to talk a little bit more about talk about the avalanche method a little bit?
Sure. So this is personally, I only had like two payments that I had to make every month. And so for me, that avalanche method made the most sense, right? Because I didn't have anything that I could just quickly and easily wipe out like you could with the snowball, where if I was making like 10 payments a month, because I know that's not uncommon for people to be making like more than 10 payments a month to different credit cards, store cards, lines of credit, computer loans, like all of that stuff, right? And so I didn't have anything like that. I just had my two payments. So for me, looking at the interest rate and paying the most towards the one with the higher interest made the most sense for sure. But I get how if I would have more payments, wiping those payments out would have felt like such a relief, right? When you're in that sense of overwhelm and the debt is weighing on you and you're like, I mean, old school, some people are still writing checks to pay their things, or you're like clicking online and you're like sending that money away. The fewer times I had to like send a chunk of my money away, I think emotionally that would have felt better. That would have built my confidence in this process because there there is a mindset shift that you have to make, and you have to feel really good about what you're doing. You have to feel really good about the progress that you're making, and it's really nice to be able to see those things like wipe off of your spreadsheet or wherever you keep track of the things that you owe. So I think that there's two schools of thought, obviously. I do also, if you're in my situation where you're not wiping things off the spreadsheet, but you're looking at balances, seeing the balance go down on the one with the higher interest rate definitely was also motivating, but you have to be someone who's checking that. And not everybody checks the balances.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good point. And that's an emotional decision as well to check or
Mhm.
not to check, right?
Yeah, I think definitely choosing the method that creates the most momentum for you, and that fuels your success. So it's going to be different for everyone, and it's just picking what really works the best for you and keeps you on track.
Right. And I think so when you we're like, we're not all over the place, but we're talking about all the aspects of this, which I think is really important because when you're in this situation and you're making this decision, these are all the things you need to think about, right? Is what's going to feel the best for me? What plan is going to help me feel like I'm making the most progress? If you're somebody who needs to see things changing in order to stay motivated and committed, then you need to consider that. If you're somebody who's really in the numbers and loves like finessing the interest rates and the payments and all of that, then that method will be better for you, right? I think that this is kind of a time where you gather all the information, you look at everything in black and white, and you make a decision about what's going to work best for you. And so once you've made your decision, you're going to have to budget and determine where that money is going to come from to dedicate to those payments. So you might have to reallocate some money. You might have to pull money from some of those categories on your budget and dedicate them more towards debt. You might have to cut back on that sort of like free spending. I don't know. People probably have different names for it. I always called it like my fun. The line was always fun on my budget. We have a little more specific categories now, but back in my debt days, it just said fun, and that like incorporated everything. So I probably needed to cut back a little from my fun line and like put it towards the budget. I reined in a little bit on my groceries. I was just super focused. I had grocery lists and I made meal plans. I still do that. It was like a habit that stuck forever. So there are ways then that you need to like evaluate your budget and determine where that money is going to come from every month to dedicate towards that debt payoff.
Jen, that's absolutely a great way to put it. It definitely involves looking at your bigger picture finances, evaluating where your money has been going and where you would like it to go. One of the things that I find for that success path is to think ahead about some of the milestones that you will make in terms of debt payment and setting some rewards. The human brain doesn't connect well with restriction and scarcity. So having a goal that is, shorter term in nature, but it's something that you're really going to look forward to. That could be a really nice dinner out or a weekend away. So you determine what reward you will use and when you'll be able to do that. So that could be once you've paid off $5,000 of debt, you will be able to take that, that little road trip or overnight at a hotel. And that will keep you focused on working towards your goals and keeping your debt payments in place. Celebrating those milestones is just really, really, really important. So build that into your debt payment plan because sometimes debt takes years and years and years to pay off. And there is no way that you can restrict yourself and not enjoy life for that many years. So building in some moments that you enjoy and keep, aligning those with your debt payment milestones.
I love that so much because it's just a really good mindset to get in because, well, for me, I think budgeting and money and finances, a lot of it is about balance, right? Balancing how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, where we're dedicating it to, what we value the most, how we want to allocate the funds that we have. And you're talking about balance in terms of also spending on things that make us feel happy, that help us celebrate, that help us bring those positive feelings back so that it's not just this like torturous situation where like, oh, it's going to take me 8 years to pay this debt off. And so for 8 years, I can't do anything fun. Well, you're going to stick with that for like 5 minutes. It's the same thing with like a healthy eating plan. If you tell someone they cannot eat dessert until they meet their goal weight, well, it's over, or not eat cheese or whatever it is, right? If we if we put on too many restrictions, it becomes very hard to continue on that like path to get where you want to be. And so I think this kind of ties, I'd like to talk about that on another level which is like connecting with a support system. I think that you could also do your celebrations with other people, right? And we're talking about, I mean, this podcast is all about women talking confidently and comfortably about money and having these conversations. So don't try to create your debt payoff plan and then work on it completely in isolation because that's just challenging and hard and it feels like a secret. And I think, Marilee, you talked before on this podcast in another episode about loud budgeting. Was it called loud budgeting? And you're just being really honest and telling people, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I think that kind of fits in here as well. And if you don't want to tell everybody you're working on a debt payoff plan, I think that's okay. But I think it's so important to connect with a friend or a family member, or somebody who can be your accountability partner or your celebration partner, that can just help you feel supported when you do feel overwhelmed or when you're like feeling tempted to spend on something you probably don't need or whatever, and set that plan up for yourself. Sybil, how does your support system work when you're working on stuff?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's so important to talk about it, whether it's your partner, your spouse, a good friend, us, start a conversation with us. Because then I feel like when you make things public and you're at that level, you've made that decision, right? Just by talking about it, you've made a decision to start doing something about it. And then I think you'll find, and what I've found is that people are just so supportive. And it's just like anything else. Once you start talking about it, you realize, oh, that person also is in a similar situation, or that person has someone to refer me to, right? But you would never know any of those things if you didn't start talking about it. The other way that you might feel more comfortable talking about debt or just finances in general is becoming just more financially literate, and also writing down your feelings, writing down what you didn't buy today. Like that acknowledgement and that physical act of writing those things down, your goals, things like that, writing in your journal will help you also talk with others and feel more confident talking with others. You know what? ChatGPT is actually a great thing to do. Put it into ChatGPT. What's the best way to get rid of this debt, or work on the avalanche method on this debt, or the snowball? What I like about ChatGPT too is you can put in, this is what I did this month. This is where I saved, or this is how I made a little extra cash and I put it towards my debt. And ChatGPT will say, congratulations, your plan sounds really great. And it sounds really silly, but for me, that helps. Like it's acknowledgement that I'm doing something, I'm working on something that's hard for me. So I would really recommend, on top of talking about it, and if you're not ready to talk about it yet, do some journaling, track your expenses, track what you're trying to do to pay off this debt. Like you said, Marilee, it's a long road for many people. And so capturing that with dates in your journals is really powerful too, because then you can look back and you can say, wow, I am doing this. I'm making a difference. I've got this whole journal of, what I didn't buy on Amazon, things like that. For me, that kind of rewards and celebration is really, really helpful as well.
What I've seen for people who are visual are those diagrams where you color in your debt payments. I find that those are really helpful for people that like to have a visual reminder. You can stick that on your fridge or, in your office, and you can kind of see your progress in one quick glance. Because I know not everyone connects with numbers. So that's a great idea for people that don't love looking at a spreadsheet or don't love looking at numbers. It's a nice visual cue. I wanted to also share one pro tip about getting like a mentor or accountability partner to really boost your success. Make sure that you set just a scheduled appointment. So, whether that's every 2 weeks or once a month, put it in the calendar, and each time that you meet, schedule the next one. It just works. Like when you have a set appointment with an accountability partner, your chances of success just skyrocket. So it's definitely why working with a coach or a financial professional is helpful, because that looming meeting really gets you to take action.
Yeah. And what we're really talking about here is having a growth mindset, right? Like all of these actions are thinking that there is a way to move forward, right? So a growth mindset means that you're trying to learn, you're trying to make decisions, you're trying to find people to talk with, to hold you accountable, right? Versus a fixed mindset where you just feel like, I can't do it, I'll never get out of debt, right? And that self-talk is so important. So many times, even if we have a growth mindset in this area, we might have a fixed mindset in this other area. And so we might be telling ourselves we can never get out of debt. It's already too late, right? And so really shifting to that growth mindset is such an important aspect in that. And there's a variety of ways that you can do that. And number one is just becoming aware that you might be limiting yourself, and that you need to figure out how to move towards more of a growth mindset. And that, Jen, you started the beginning with really making that decision, right? And once you've made that decision, that's a sign that, oh, I've moved into a growth mindset. I can do this. And it's continuous, right? You have to continually feed yourself the I can attitude. I will be able to. I am doing it, right? Those are all growth mindset.
The other thing that I notice as well is when you're thinking about debt, when you're thinking about your finances, just watch the language that you use. So, Sybil, you made a great point about saying that sometimes people feel like they're going to be in debt forever. So when you hear yourself say those words, just take a pause and think, whose words are these? Like, is this something that I heard when I was growing up? Do I really believe this? And just see, like, sometimes that can really shift things because we pick up a lot of our beliefs in childhood and they just stick along with us throughout adulthood, and they may not always be our beliefs, but that language has an impact on the progress that you make. So it's always great to look for those little clues.
I agree so much. I used to say all the time, I'm so terrible with money. I'm so bad at money. Like, I would say that to myself all the time. Well, of course I was. I was literally telling myself every day, right? And so that, like, making the decision and then coming up with a plan and then figuring out like how you're going to reward yourself for all of your successes, embracing that growth mindset, like all of those are pieces to the process. And you should feel good about every single one of those steps. And not only just celebrate them, but like you both were just saying, like change your language with yourself. Look what I'm doing. I am doing it. I'm making my payments on time. I am paying off extra. I am crossing things off this list. Like just acknowledging those if the victory feels so small, acknowledging it, I think, is really important. This obviously we could just keep talking about this forever, right? All the pieces of it, whether it's the debt and the payoff itself or like the growth mindset or all these pieces, we could just keep talking about it. But that's why we're making a whole series about debt. And this is just episode 1, because we feel like that overwhelming feeling that some people have from their debt is like the top of mind. So we wanted to start here. And then the rest of this series, we're going to be talking about all kinds of things debt related. So good debt versus bad debt, how you can use debt to your benefit. There are certain types of debt that can really be beneficial. We're going to talk about stress management around money, balancing like how much money to put in savings versus pay towards your debt. So we've got all kinds of helpful tips that we're going to share with you over the next several episodes, and I am excited about it. I feel like we're all going to learn so much from each other and our ideas and experiences that we've had. So remember, we would love to hear from all of you. So send us your thoughts you have, send us any questions, and be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast so that you don't miss any of our episodes. And we've also got freebies that you can download that support each series that we share. So don't forget to subscribe, and we will send those downloads to you so that you can follow along. They all partner with each episode. And we are looking forward to chatting with you next time.